My parents gave their home as a wedding gift to my sister, even though I'd been paying their mortgage for 5 years. 2 months later, they wanted to move to my vacation house, so I refused them. But then the cops called me. Before we begin the story, take a moment to support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your support means the world to our channel and helps us spread more shocking true stories to light. Now, let's get started. The wedding gift that shattered everything. My husband, Mark, and I pulled up outside the wedding venue, the place where my sister, Lily, was about to say I do. Mark adjusted his suit jacket, making sure the envelope inside was secure. The envelope containing $10,000. Our wedding gift to Lily. And that wasn't all. We had already covered about a third of the wedding expenses, too. A small fortune. But Mark's lucrative career in investment banking and my position as a marketing director meant we could afford it. Besides, Lily was my only sister. Family takes care of family. As we stepped inside, my eyes immediately found my parents. Mom was fussing over Dad's tie while he grumbled playfully, but I could see it, the happiness radiating from them. They looked different. Younger, lighter. Mom's face practically glowed with joy, and Dad looked like he had shed a decade. A tight knot twisted in my stomach. I searched my memories, trying to recall if they had looked this happy in my own wedding 5 years ago. No, they had been polite, supportive even, but not like this. Not beaming with uncontainable pride. I pushed the thought away. This wasn't the time to get lost in old wounds. Today was about Lily. The ceremony was perfect. Lily looked stunning in her flowing white dress, and her fiancé, Jake, couldn't take his eyes off her. Sitting between Mark and my parents, I clapped, smiled, and tried to stay in the moment. But that gnawing feeling remained, lurking just beneath the surface. Then came the reception. Laughter, music, dancing. We ate, we drank, we celebrated. For a little while, I managed to shake off that lingering unease. But when the speeches began, everything changed. First, the best man spoke, followed by the maid of honor. Then my parents stood up together, clinking their glasses for attention. Mom smiled warmly at the crowd. We want to thank everyone for coming today to celebrate our beloved daughter's wedding. Beloved. The way she said it sent an uneasy shiver down my spine. Dad continued, his voice thick with emotion. Watching Lily grow into the incredible woman she is today has been the greatest joy of our lives. She has always been special, always brought so much light into our home. I smiled, nodding along like everyone else, but something about his words pricked at me. Of course, they love Lily. They love both of us, right? Then Mom reached in her purse, pulling out a small stack of papers. Jake, Lily, she announced, holding up the documents for everyone to see. Your father and I wanted to give you something to start your new life together. Something special. She paused for dramatic effect before declaring, we're giving you our family home as a wedding present. The room gasped, followed by a wave of thunderous applause. I froze. Beside me, Mark stiffened. My hands clenched the fabric of my dress as I stared at my parents, then at Lily. She wasn't shocked. Tears of joy streamed down her face as she clutched Jake's arm. He looked like he had just won the lottery. And maybe he had. No. That house. The house they had just given away so effortlessly. I had been paying the mortgage on it for the last 5 years. Not once had they mentioned this to me. Not once had they asked. And the worst part? Lily had known. A smile that hid my rage. I forced my lips into a smile, the kind of smile that felt like it was stapled onto my face, artificial and hollow. Applause filled the room. My parents beamed proudly. Lily sobbed happy tears into Jake's shoulder. And me? I sat there paralyzed. The house. My parents' house. The one with the mortgage I had been paying for 5 years. The one they had never mentioned gifting to Lily. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as sandpaper. Tessa, you okay? Mark whispered beside me. Fine, I said through gritted teeth, my smile never wavering. Because this was not the time. Not here. Not in the middle of Lily's wedding reception. I refused to create a scene. I refused to let them see me break. So, I sat there, nodding, clapping when appropriate, watching as my parents embraced Lily and Jake, handing over the very roof I had kept over their heads. An hour later, I couldn't take it anymore. I found Mark by the bar, gripping a glass of whiskey like it was the only thing keeping him from throwing it across the room. "Can we leave?" I asked, voice low, strained. He looked at me, his sharp blue eyes scanning my face. He didn't need to ask why. He just nodded. "I'll get our coats." We made our polite goodbyes. Mark had an early meeting. We were so sorry to leave. Such a beautiful wedding. Congratulations again. I kept my voice even, my tone pleasant. I played the role of the supportive sister one last time. No one questioned it. No one noticed the tremor in my hands. The second the car doors shut, I shattered. Tears spilled down my face, sobs racking my body as Mark drove, his hands gripping the wheel tighter than I'd ever seen. "I can't believe they did that," I choked out. I paid that mortgage for 5 years, Mark. 5 years. And they didn't even tell me. They didn't even ask me. Mark exhaled sharply. "It's unbelievable." And Lily knew. Did you see her face? She wasn't surprised at all. I swiped angrily at my tears. "This isn't about the money. I don't care about the money. But my voice broke. They could have talked to me first." I turned, staring out the window as streetlights blurred past, memories flooding in. All the times I had been second to Lily. When I graduated college, they gave me a card with $50. When Lily graduated 2 years later, they bought her a brand new car. My 21st birthday dinner? They skipped it because Lily had a volleyball game. Not even a championship, just a game. They went to every one of her events, cheered her on, bragged about her accomplishments. Mine? They barely mentioned them. It had always been Lily first. Always. And I had accepted it. For years, I had told myself it was just how things were, that maybe I was being too sensitive. But this was something I couldn't ignore. By the time we got home, my tears had dried, leaving only exhaustion and a hollow ache in my chest. Mark followed me into the bedroom, undoing his tie, watching me carefully. "So, where are your parents going to live now?" he asked as I changed into my pajamas. I pulled my shirt over my head and shrugged. "I have no idea." Then, climbing into bed, I turned off the light and whispered, "But it's not my problem anymore." The invitation I should have ignored. For the next 3 weeks, I did my best to bury it all. I woke up, went to work, came home, repeated. I refused to think about the wedding, the house, or the betrayal that sat like a stone in my chest. But anger has a way of simmering beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to boil over. That moment came on a quiet Thursday evening when my phone rang. "Mom." I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Tessa, honey." Mom chirped like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just given away the house I had been paying for. "We're having a family dinner this weekend. Your sister and Jake are back from their honeymoon, and we'd love for you and Mark to join us." I almost laughed. A family dinner? After what you did? Every fiber of my being screamed to say no, to hang up, to tell her exactly where she could shove that invitation. But some pathetic, hopeful part of me whispered, maybe they'll apologize. Maybe they'll explain. So instead of all the words I wanted to say, what came out was, "Fine, we'll be there." Saturday arrived too quickly. As Mark and I pulled into the driveway, I stared at the house that used to be my parents'. Only now, Lily's car sat parked in the driveway, alongside my parents' old sedan. I hesitated before ringing the doorbell. It felt wrong not using my key, but it wasn't their house anymore, and it sure as hell wasn't mine. Mom opened the door, all smiles. "Tessa, Mark, come in, come in." She hugged me like nothing had happened, like she hadn't blindsided me at the wedding, like she hadn't handed my sister a house I had been paying for. I forced myself to hug her back, my arms stiff at my sides. Dad was in the living room, watching a game with Jake. When we entered, he stood up, giving Mark a firm handshake and me a quick hug, casual, normal, as if we hadn't spoken in weeks. I swallowed the bitter taste in my mouth. "Where's Lily?" I asked, my voice more clipped than I intended. "Oh, she's in the dining room. Changing the curtains," Mom said breezily. "She's been redecorating all week." Something inside me snapped. 3 weeks. It had been 3 damn weeks since the wedding, and Lily was already making changes. As if this house had always been hers. As if I had never existed in this equation at all. I followed Mom into the dining room, and there she was, Lily, standing on a step ladder, hanging up brand new cream-colored curtains, replacing the blue ones Mom had had for years. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth hurt. Dinner was served soon after. Mom's special pot roast, surrounded by all the usual sides. It smelled amazing, but my appetite had vanished the moment I walked through that door. For the first 10 minutes, all I did was listen. Lily and Jake went on and on about their honeymoon in Hawaii, describing every little detail like it was the most fascinating story ever told. I barely touched my food, only nodding occasionally as Mark took over the role of being polite for both of us. Then, finally, Mom cleared her throat. "So," she started, her voice shifting into something too careful. "Tessa, we want to talk to you about something." I didn't react, just waited. Mom glanced at Dad, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Well, as you know, we've given the house to Lily and Jake as their wedding present," she said. I let out a slow, measured breath. "Oh, I know. The thing is," she continued, "they're a young couple starting their life together. They need their own space." I raised an eyebrow, and Dad sighed, finally cutting to the chase. "We can't stay here with them, Tessa. They need privacy." I placed my fork down carefully. "I see." "So," Mom said, her voice light, as if she were suggesting something as casual as a weekend trip, "we've decided we're going to move into your vacation home." Silence. My fingers curled into fists beneath the table. "The vacation home," I repeated slowly. "My vacation home." Mom nodded like this was the most reasonable suggestion in the world. "It's the perfect size for us, and it's in such a nice, quiet area. We'd be comfortable there." I laughed. A sharp, humorless, "Are you kidding me?" laugh. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice eerily calm. "You gave your house, the house I've been paying the mortgage on for 5 years, to Lily, and now you think you're just going to move into my vacation home without even asking me first." "Tessa, be reasonable," Dad said, frowning. "Where else are we supposed to go?" "That's not my problem," I snapped. "You had a house. You gave it away. You don't even use it that much," Lily chimed in, rolling her eyes. I turned to her, my anger bubbling to the surface. "Are you serious right now?" My voice shook with disbelief. "It's my property. I bought it with my money. I get to decide who uses it and when." Mom's face paled. "You can't mean that. You're not saying no, are you?" I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. "That's exactly what I'm saying." The room fell into stunned silence. Then, Mom's face crumpled. "How can you do this to us?" she cried. "After everything we've done for you? We're your parents." "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "And as my parents, you might have thought to discuss this with me before making these decisions." Mom's voice rose in panic. "You don't have the right to refuse us." I stared at her, ice running through my veins. "I have every right. It's my house." Lily slammed her hand on the table. "God, you're so cruel and greedy. You've always been jealous of me because Mom and Dad love me more." I turned to her, suddenly feeling nothing but exhaustion. "If Mom and Dad love you so much," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "and you love them so much, then why don't you let them live here with you?" Lily's mouth snapped shut. She looked away, suddenly fascinated by her plate. That's not the point," she muttered. "Of course it isn't," I said bitterly. Dad sighed heavily. "Tessa, please, just let us stay there. It's only fair." I scoffed. "Fair? Fair would have been talking to me before you gave away a house I was paying for. Fair would have been treating me like I mattered." The weight of every ignored moment, every overlooked milestone, every time I've been pushed aside in favor of Lily, it all crashed over me. I stood up, grabbing my purse. "Mark, I think we're done here." I ignored their protests, their pleas, their attempts to guilt me. This time, I wasn't falling for it. This time, I was walking away. The breaking point. The car ride home was silent. Mark didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't need to. My hands were trembling, my breathing shallow, and my jaw clenched so tight it ached. It wasn't just anger. It wasn't just betrayal. It was years of being second, years of being an afterthought, years of knowing my parents loved Lily more, but never having it thrown in my face quite like this. I stared out the window, watching the streetlights blur past. Mark finally spoke. "Are you going to block them?" I inhaled deeply. "I think I need to." He nodded. "Then do it." So I did. That night, I blocked my parents and Lily from my phone and social media. At least for now. I needed space to think, to breathe, to process everything that had just happened. For the first time in my life, I was putting myself first. And it felt strange. 2 weeks passed in blissful silence. No calls, no texts, no passive-aggressive guilt trips. Mark and I fell back into our normal routine. Work, home, dinners with friends who didn't try to manipulate me into giving up my property. It was nice. I was finally starting to feel normal again. And then, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a notification. Security alert. Motion detected. Pine Ridge property. My stomach dropped. I quickly opened the app, pulling up the security feed. The front door was swinging open. Someone had used a key, but they hadn't disabled the alarm. Before I could even react, my phone rang. "This is Safeguard Security," a professional voice said. "Miss Wilson, we've detected unauthorized entry at your property. Is this an expected visitor?" "No," I said, my voice sharp. "Absolutely not. Send the police. Now." An hour later, my phone rang again. "This is Officer Rhea with the local police department," a man's voice said. "We're at your Pine Ridge property. We have 2 individuals here who claim to be your parents. They have keys to the property, but admitted they don't have permission to be here." I closed my eyes, inhaling slowly. They actually did it. They actually tried to move in. "Yes," I said, voice cold. "They're my parents, but they have 0 permission to be there." There was a pause. "Understood. How would you like to proceed?" Since they used a key rather than forced entry, it's a bit of a gray area legally. "We can remove them, or if you want to pursue trespassing charges, we can. I'll be there in an hour." Mark and I were already grabbing our coats before I even hung up the phone. The drive to my vacation home was tense. My fingers dug into my thighs, my entire body buzzing with disbelief and fury. They really thought they could just take it? Mark muttered. "After you explicitly told them no? They don't think I have the right to say no," I said bitterly. "They never have." When we pulled into the driveway, my heart hammered against my ribs. A police cruiser was parked out front. 2 officers stood by the porch. And there, sitting on the front steps like 2 miserable children caught stealing from the cookie jar, were my parents. Suitcases and boxes surrounded them. They had been moving in. Dad stood up immediately. "Tessa, thank God you're here. Tell these officers there's been a misunderstanding." I ignored him, walking straight to the officers. "Thank you for responding so quickly. Yes, these are my parents." "No, they do not have permission to be here." One officer nodded. "Ma'am, do you want to press charges for trespassing?" Mom gasped. "Tessa, you wouldn't." I turned to her, rage bubbling to the surface. "You broke into my house after I explicitly told you no. What did you think was going to happen?" "We didn't break in." Dad protested. "We used the key you gave us." "This is your fault." Mom suddenly snapped, standing up. "If you had just let us stay here like we planned, none of this would have happened. We wouldn't be standing here being treated like criminals." I stared at her, stunned by the sheer audacity. "My fault," I repeated, my voice deadly calm. "You gave away a house I was paying for. Then you tried to take my property. And somehow that's my fault." Mom's eyes burned with fury. "We raised you. We gave you everything. And this is how you repay us." I let out a slow breath. This was pointless. They weren't sorry. They weren't ever going to be sorry. I turned to the officers. "I'd like a word in private." We stepped a few feet away, out of earshot. "I don't want to press charges," I admitted quietly. "They're still my parents, even if they're being absolutely ridiculous right now. But I also can't let them stay here." The officer nodded. "Understood. We can take them to the station for a few hours, give them a stern warning about trespassing, and then release them. Sometimes a little time in a holding cell is a good wake-up call." I considered it. Maybe this was what they needed to finally understand. "Yes, do that." I walked back to where my parents sat, arms crossed, faces tight with barely restrained anger. "The officers are taking you to the station for a few hours," I told them. "I'm not pressing charges, but I want you to understand how serious this is. You cannot just move into someone's house without permission, even if you're family." Mom stared at me, her expression shifting from anger to something almost desperate. "We have nowhere to go, Tessa." I shrugged. "You had a house. You gave it away. Dad opened his mouth, but before he could speak, the officers gestured for them to stand. As they were led to the cruiser, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just exhaustion. Mark squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I nodded, but I wasn't sure if it was true. While we waited for the locksmith, I arranged for my parents' belongings to be taken to a storage unit. I paid for 1 month. Then, I texted Lily the storage details, since my parents were still blocked. Since this was her mess to deal with. By the time the locksmith changed the locks, the house was secure again. Mark and I got back in the car, and as we pulled onto the road, he glanced over at me. "What do you think they'll do now?" I exhaled slowly. "Go crying to Lily. She got the house. She could deal with the responsibility that came with it." The public smear campaign. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of peace. No calls, no texts, no manipulation. I had drawn a line, finally, and for once, I wasn't being guilted into erasing it. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Mom wasn't the type to let things go quietly, and I was right. A week later, I woke up, made my morning coffee, and absent-mindedly scrolled through Facebook. That's when I saw it. A long, dramatic post from my mother, already filled with dozens of sympathetic comments from relatives and family friends. Today, I learned what it means to be abandoned by your own child. My husband and I, in our golden years, have been cast out like unwanted pets. Our eldest daughter, Tessa, had the police remove us from her vacation home like common criminals, leaving us with nowhere to go. After everything we have done for her, raising her, sacrificing for her, this is how she repays us. It breaks my heart that we've come to this point, but I hope one day she realizes how deeply she has hurt us. Family should mean something. Please, hold your loved ones close, because you never know when they will turn their backs on you. I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. You've got to be kidding me. I scrolled through the comments, my stomach twisting. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. How could she do this to you? That's disgusting. Parents should never be treated that way." Tessa was always such a selfish child. Not surprised. I could feel the rage bubbling up, hot and sharp in my chest. She had conveniently left out a few key details, like how they had given away their own home without telling me, like how I'd been paying their mortgage for 5 years, like how they had tried to steal my property after I explicitly told them no. Mark walked into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked, pouring himself a cup of coffee. I turned my phone around so he could see the post. He read it. His expression darkened. "She really has no shame, does she?" I took a slow breath, my hands shaking. "No, she doesn't." For a few moments, I debated ignoring it, letting people believe whatever they wanted. But then I thought about the years of being cast aside, the years of staying quiet to keep the peace, the years of letting them walk all over me. Not this time. I started typing. The truth comes out. I've stayed silent about family matters until now. But since my mother has chosen to make our private issues public, I feel I need to share my side of the story. Here are some key details that were conveniently left out of her post. For the past 5 years, I have been paying the mortgage on my parents' house because they couldn't afford it. 3 weeks ago, at my sister Lily's wedding, which I also helped pay for, my parents announced they were giving away the house to my sister. They made this decision without consulting me, despite the fact that I was the one keeping the house financially afloat. After I found out, they informed me that they planned to move into my vacation home, again without asking me. When I told them no, they attempted to move in any way, using an old spare key, triggering my security system, and getting the police involved. I didn't throw my parents out. They gave away their home and then tried to take mine without permission. I've always done my best to help my family, but I refuse to be taken advantage of or made out to be the villain for refusing to give up yet another home after already paying for theirs. Family is about mutual respect, not just taking whatever you want because we're family. I hit post before I could overthink it. Mark glanced over my shoulder, reading the screen. Then he smiled slightly. Good. It's about time everyone knows the truth. The response was immediate. Notifications flooded in. Comments poured on my post. Wait, you were paying their mortgage? And they just gave the house away? This is insane. They were basically stealing from you. Why didn't your sister let them stay with her after they gave her the house? Wow, the level of entitlement here is unreal. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one on the receiving end of the judgment. For the first time, people were seeing what I had been dealing with all these years. Consequences. 2 days later, my cousin Jessica called me. I just wanted to check on you, she said carefully. Your mom and dad tried to go back to their house. I mean, Lily's house now. I sat up straighter. And Jessica hesitated. She wouldn't let them in. My breath caught. Wait, seriously? Yeah. Apparently, she told them, it's my house now. There's no room for you. I wasn't sure how to feel about that. On one hand, it was exactly what they had done to themselves. On the other, they were still my parents. They're staying in some cheap apartment now, Jessica continued. Your mom had to go back to working full-time to afford the rent. Mark walked in as I was processing all of this. What's up? He asked. I covered the phone and whispered, my parents went to Lily's, and she turned them away. Mark snorted. Karma. I forced a laugh, but it didn't quite reach my chest. After we hung up, I leaned back on the couch, exhaling slowly. I should have felt victorious. But instead, all I felt was tired. Mark sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. What's on your mind? I sighed. I don't feel as satisfied as I thought I would. That's because you're a good person, he said simply. Unlike some people we could mention. I gave him a small smile, leaning into him. We sat there in silence for a moment before he asked, do you think you'll ever forgive them? I thought about it. Maybe someday. Not for them. For me. Carrying around all this anger wasn't healthy. But I wasn't ready yet. And Lily? That was more complicated. She had known what they were planning. She had been part of it. And then, when it no longer suited her, she abandoned them. At least now I knew where I stood. No more illusions. No more hoping I'd ever be as important to them as Lily. And strangely, that realization felt freeing. A final goodbye. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. Mom. I hesitated. Then I pressed play. Her voice was different now, small, uncertain. Tessa, we made a mistake. A big one. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But please call us back. We need to talk. I stared at my phone. Then, slowly I pressed delete. Maybe one day, I'd be ready to listen. But not today. Today I was choosing me. And for the first time in my life, that felt like the right choice. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more real-life family dramas. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's story. Was it fair or totally messed up? See you in the next one.